Welcome to the I Now Pronounce You Divorced podcast, where we have three award-winning family law attorneys dive into intriguing topics like divorce, military divorce, custody and visitation, trust and estate planning, and all things family law. Join us as we provide a comprehensive viewpoint through the eyes of our experts and guests, aiming to educate and soothe our listeners. Get ready to tune in because I Now Pronounce You Divorced starts right now.
Hi, I'm Charles Hatley with Lone Hatley PC, and this is our podcast, I Now Pronounce You Divorced. Today, we're super excited to be joined by Chris Rice, who is going to discuss a little bit with us about refinance issues and things that you should be looking at while you're going through divorce. And as always, Rebecca and Dan have joined us. So, Chris, I want to give you an opportunity. Can you introduce yourself and kind of explain what you do and how you really help people?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, thanks for having me, guys. I'm a mortgage banker with Atlantic Bay Mortgage Group here in Virginia Beach, licensed in North Carolina and Virginia. I've been in the industry since 2005, so been around the block a little bit, seen a few things, had some fun, and was able to stick it out. Really enjoy the process of helping people, buy dream homes or refinance their home that they're in and put themselves in a better situation. So, yeah.
And, my first question for you is when you're going through any sort of life change, right?
Mm-hmm.
How important is it to start getting information? I mean, a financial, your house, that's usually one of the biggest assets that we have. It's a lot of money. The paperwork generally, even though I'm sure you try to do it quickly, still a lot of paperwork to do. How important is it to get started early?
Extremely important. I always say the best time to start planning when it comes to either buying or refinancing a home is like right now. if you've the thoughts even crossed your mind to do something big financially, and you're thinking about buying or refinancing a home in the near future, you should probably talk to your mortgage professional as soon as possible to see how this could affect the possibility of you buying or refinancing a home into your name. So, ASAP is the easiest way to answer that, right?
Absolutely. And Rebecca, when you are working with clients, what do you tell them about refinancing, and how do you and Chris kind of discuss those issues?
Right. So just like Chris said, it's better to approach that as soon as you possibly can. If you have a client, as a divorce attorney, if you have a client who comes in and says, I really want to stay in the home because of X or Y reason. I really want my kids to stay in the same school. I really want to preserve some sort of normalcy for them, whatever. We need to figure out if that's anywhere feasible financially. And the only way to do that is to go through the process. And so I want them to make sure they're having that conversation with Chris at the very, very beginning, because I don't want to spend a whole year negotiating a case or working through litigation, trying to fight for my client to be able to keep a house, only to then find out they absolutely can't qualify. They absolutely cannot keep the house under no circumstances. So that's an introduction that I want to make early on and just make sure that it's something feasible before we go out there and fight for it. And so one thing that has been really helpful for me is learning about all the different ways that somebody like Chris can consider income, or different ways that he can sort of maneuver someone financially who's maybe right on the line into qualifying where they might not have been able to before. So Chris, can you tell us a little bit about what you're looking for when people are going through a divorce that can help them financially to stay in their home?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, first of all, you kind of touched on this. It's, one of the very first questions, if not the first question I ask is like, what are your goals? Like, what are we looking to do here?
Mm-hmm.
Are we looking to just keep the home, no matter what it takes type thing? Are we just trying to feel it out, see what the monthly payments look like, all that fun stuff? And then, are we looking to pull cash out? Do we need to pull cash out to pay off, another owner of the home, what have you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Once I have those questions, it comes down answered, then it comes down to like, what can we use for income and so forth. Obviously in divorce situations, a lot of times, there could be alimony or child support that comes into play. To use that, there's very specific guidelines on the mortgage side, which we would have to take into account, right? Obviously, when it comes to income, we can use the normal W-2 income coming from any other source of employment, retirement that's personal, Social Security, etc. But for alimony and child support, we can use that with some caveats. We need to know and prove that they're going to continue for at least 3 years, right? So, if you have let's say a 17-year-old child and you're getting child support, well, unless it explicitly says in the divorce decree or the separation agreement that it's going to continue for 3 more years, we probably can't use it, right? Because a lot of times child support cuts off at 18. So, we have to ask those questions. And then on top of that, we also need to show that they've been receiving it for a period of time. For 3 months for FHA or VA, or 6 months receipt on a conventional loan. So that means, they have to have been receiving it for the past 3 months or 6 months, depending on the type of loan we're looking to do, which can be kind of difficult in some circumstances. Obviously, it's helpful if they get in touch with you as soon as possible, start working on a separation agreement, right? And you put that child support in that separation agreement, and then they have the time between the separation and the divorce to start receiving those payments, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So that's one thing that I was always really surprised about once I got more kind of in depth in the refinance process. There's a lot of misconception that I can just go apply for my refinance right now on day number 1 of my separation, and I can have this thing finalized in 60 days or 90 days. And for a lot of clients, that's just not going to be the case, especially if we're trying to factor in that spousal support or that child support, showing proof of the receipt, having the agreement in place, having your court order finalized. You're looking at probably like 18 months, right? What do you find to be kind of the typical timeline for people going through a divorce to get a refinance?
Yeah, obviously it depends on where they are in the process, right? A lot of time, that can vary when I get put into the whole situation. It could be they've already got you guys have already put in a separation agreement and everything else, and now we're moving on to the next phase. Or it could be right at the beginning, right? And if we're right at the beginning, like you said, it could take 12 months to 18 months. It could be a lot quicker. Also, it depends on the borrower, the transaction, and the need, right? Do we need to use this income for qualifying or not? So, yeah, I always think of my job as, to be the person there to show the options, right? I'm not going to tell you this is what you have to do. You need to do this loan, or we need to go down this path. It's to say, hey, here's your option. We can do this or we can do this. Which one works best for you? They're the ones that are going to be living in the home. They're the ones making the monthly payments and stuff like that. So why should I be the one making those decisions for them, right?
How many times have you been brought in as an advisor? I'm listening to you talk, and I'm thinking, when I would really litigate, I would contact someone such as yourself and bring them on board as an advisor. And what I mean by that is because you've made such good points to where what is the length of time you have to show for receipt, and when you're crafting a settlement agreement, you want to take that into consideration because you're thinking, okay, maybe I'll create something now and accept less so I can get in on a rate, right? Because I want to lock in on it. Or do I want to sit and wait? And so I would think your role, it's not just advising as in here are your options, but how often are you brought in as more of an advisor to someone to weigh, do I wait now or what does it look like down the road?
Yeah. Well, that's kind of a loaded question. I would say not nearly enough. No, but I mean, you guys do a great job of that, right? Of introducing me early in the process, right? And I think that whether you're going through a divorce or a separation, or you're a separation or divorce attorney, you need to be talking to a loan officer as soon in the process as possible. You know, if to go back to Charles's question earlier, right? If you're thinking about getting a separation, you probably should talk to you're going to talk to everybody. You're going to talk to an attorney. Well, you should probably talk uh, to your trusted mortgage professional and your financial advisor, right? At the same time, so that you have all your ducks in a row and have an idea of what's the time frames on all this. When can I do this stuff? What can I expect in the process, right? And how quickly can I move on a refinance, or how quickly can the spouse refinance into their name solely? Whether you want to keep the house or the spouse wants to keep the house, you should have these conversations up front right away, so that everybody's on the same page, right? It makes it a lot easier. I'm sure you guys would agree. It makes the whole process a lot easier if both parties are on kind of the same page, you know? Because, if you have one spouse that wants to buy immediately and needs to come off the mortgage, and the other person can't qualify, well, let's get on the same page and understand that this may take some time, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, I like to requalify, because especially now, interest. So many people have low interest rates and they have high valued houses, right? So there's a huge benefit for somebody to try to buy somebody else out.
Yep.
But even in doing that, you have to be careful, because you might hold off and say, I'm going to give you X number of years to get refinanced, to get on your feet, to get refinanced. As long as you're paying the mortgage, it really doesn't hurt me. And before you know it, you're going to lose that, the house will be sold at some point, and you might be hit with capital gains tax because you didn't actually live there. And so if your separation agreement is not written properly, even the best laid plans could hit you a capital gains tax in the rear end. But
Yep.
one of the questions that I had was, a lot of our clients are in the military. And I know that you deal with a lot of VA home loans. Can you kind of explain to us if there is a way to have a VA home loan on two homes at once? And is there a way to refinance a VA home loan into somebody who is not a military member, like an ex-spouse?
Sure. So the answer to your first question, absolutely, you can have multiple VA loans. Doesn't matter. The VA allows it. Absolutely, positively. It's a big misnomer out there that, well, I used my VA loan on this house. I still own it. I can't qualify for another VA loan. You absolutely can. Okay. Now, how much does it qualify you for 100% financing? That's something we have to take a look at individually, right? Now, refinancing a home that's currently a VA loan, or using the VA loan into, in a divorce situation, will depend. Who has the VA eligibility, right? If the wife bought, when they bought the home, if the wife has VA eligibility as a veteran and the husband is not, well, then the husband is not going to be able to refinance it into another VA loan. Okay. But, a lot of times maybe both of them are veterans, right? And maybe they just used the wife's VA eligibility when they bought the home. Well, now the husband wants to stay in the home. Well, they can refinance and he can use his VA eligibility to now refinance it into a VA loan. The VA loan's an incredible product, an incredible loan. Obviously, in this area, in Virginia Beach, Norfolk area, we deal with a lot of VA loans. So a lot of experience, love it. It's great. As a veteran, if you are on, if the home was bought using your VA eligibility, you want to get that eligibility back, right? You don't want it tied up on a home that, that you don't own, or you're not living in or have the rights to. So you want to get that refinanced. out of your eligibility as soon as possible.
There's also some problems with getting divorced and leaving your VA loan with your ex-spouse who's not in the military. So there's some problems with that as well.
Yeah, I would imagine.
So we've talked a lot about just spouses trying to divide up a property. What happens if there's somebody else's name? Like when the parties went to purchase it, someone's dad co-signed with them. What does that look like? Is it significantly different in a refi situation, or is it kind of all the same? Doesn't really matter who's on it.
For the most part, it's generally the same. It can vary depending on whether or not they're on title, right?
Okay.
If they're on title, we can, basically either way, we can do a refinance. Okay. The only difference would be who's eligible to get paid out from the proceeds of the refinance.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So if they're on title, if dad helped son and daughter-in-law buy a home, and now daughter-in-law wants to keep the home, and father wants his portion of the proceeds of the refinance, is if he's on title, that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
If he's not going to be eligible for the proceeds from that. So only the people on the title are eligible for those proceeds. Okay. And the reason for that really is we want to keep this as, even though we're pulling cash out of the property to pay off, a spouse, it's still considered not a cash out refinance if there's, a divorce decree or separation agreement in place showing that, so-and-so is, needs to get paid 50% of the equity of the home, right? And the reason for that is on a cash out refinance, you get a slightly higher interest rate than you would. And there's, some other qualifications as well. But on a non-cash out, it's a more favorable terms, right?
Got it. So then kind of on the flip side, if you have parties who are going through a divorce, how beneficial is it, say the wife really wants to keep the house,
Mm-hmm.
for her to then bring in another co-signer and have like a parent co-sign? What kind of a difference can that make in a case?
I mean, it can be a big difference, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially, I know I've had scenarios just like that, right? Where maybe the wife does not qualify yet, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or the husband doesn't quite qualify yet, whether it's because they haven't been receiving the alimony or child support long enough to count it,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe they're, coming back into the workforce, right? And maybe we have to, we don't have consistent enough income yet to show that they qualify for the home. So we add, their mother, father, whomever, to help them qualify now for the home so that they can keep their family in the home. A lot of times it's about the kids, right? I want to keep the kids in their home. That's what they're comfortable with. That's where they've lived for their, however long. It's the schools that they like, things like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So any way we can kind of keep everybody happy is the best way possible, right? And that's why it goes back to the goals, right? Why that's one of the first questions I always ask is, what are your goals in this? Because if their goals are to, keep their kids in this house, so that they're going to the same schools, getting the same teachers that they're used to and all that stuff, well, okay, let's talk about that. What does it take,
Mm-hmm.
right, for you to do that? Here's what we need. We either need to be able to count this income or get your income up to this. We maybe need to get debts down to here, or we need to start talking about maybe adding a cosigner. Is mom or dad or grandma or grandpa willing, able, and eligible to cosign for you?
What forms of verification do you ask for when someone says, this is my income, as they're kind of filling out the application? Because on credit apps, there's usually none, right? Or when you're applying for a car loan. So I'm guessing it's probably a lot different on your side.
Yeah, a little different. Just about everything under the sun is how I like to describe it to clients. be prepared to sign over your firstborn and give me a drop of your blood. Obviously we need a lot more than you would on a credit card, right? You ask for a credit card, they ask you how much you make, you just fill it in, right? On a mortgage, we're going to need to see proof of that income, pay stubs, W-2s, if you're self-employed, tax returns, business tax returns. If you got rental properties, we look at the tax returns, the Schedule E. We need to see leases, things of that nature. For the divorce, like if we're counting alimony or child support, well, we're going to need to see the order, whether that's just a child support order or, a divorce decree or separation agreement showing explicitly it's stated in there. Now, and then we're going to need to see proof of receipt, like I said. Now, on FHA, we can use, we don't need an order necessarily for the child support. Again, we have to see that it's going to continue for 3 years. And as long as we can show proof that you've been receiving recurring payments, we can use that for qualification. It's got to be 12 months, okay? And again, likelihood to continue for 3 years. Basically, how old are the kids, right?
Yeah, it seems to me as you're talking, it's like all about structuring and how creative can you be, and you give such great options. Whereas from a practitioner, it's what can we do to make this happen, right? Because it's not 3 years of child support, 3 years of spouse, just 3 years of income, essentially, right? And so that to me is just something as others are tuning in and listening and thinking, okay, what can I do to really help my client out? This is just such valuable information on the best way to really create that agreement to move cases forward and to make sure that, as if you've mentioned, that we're all on the same page. Nothing's worse than you think you know what the client wants, then you get to the end and it's like the complete opposite. And then here we are almost back to this square one.
Yeah, and not only what they want, but also what can they get, right? Like, whether if they want to stay in the house and you think that this is what's required, like Rebecca said, if you just think, well, as long as we have, the child support agreement showing that they're going to receive child support of $600 a month, we can use that for income. Well, no, right? We have to show receipt of it for, at least 3 months if we're doing FHA or VA, or 6 months, on a conventional one. So, it's important. And, I always kind of say, I'm going to stay in my lane. I'm not going to give somebody, divorce advice, right? Like that's y'all's purview, right? Try and stay in your lane to some extent, but also understand it, right? To some extent as well, because you want to make sure you're able to give the best advice possible. So, yeah, I think it's important for attorneys to kind of have a vague idea and then go to the expert, the mortgage professional, and say, hey, what, here's the situation. What do we need to put in here? Or us as a team, right? Like Rebecca and I, we may work together on something with a client, obviously, if the client's okay with that and all that, all the legal stuff. But, let's walk through it together as a team.
That's wonderful advice. I think it kind of goes back. I always think about Henry Ford testifying in front of Congress that he wasn't smart enough to own the largest company in the world. And he said, I don't need to know the answers to your questions because I have buttons on my desk that call on the experts that do know the answers to your questions. Absolutely. And any professional should kind of approach what they do the same way. If we try to be an expert at everything, we would know nothing. So, Chris, I really want to thank you for joining us today. When we're talking about divorce and dividing up mortgages and houses, the ramifications are in the hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars for some people. And, what we're going to do, if it's okay with you, we'll put your contact information below. And if you or somebody is going through divorce and you're really looking for a partner that you can count on, a partner that understands that bringing in experts to answer each and one of your questions is what's most important, give us a call and see the difference that we can make for you today. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning into our podcast. If you found this episode helpful and you want more informational content, Please be sure to subscribe and join us on all major social media platforms, including YouTube. Stay connected for more exciting updates and tips.